So you want to play Dungeons & Dragons, but you're just not sure what you need to get started. Maybe you've looked at the 3 core rulebooks and decided that they're a little intimidating because, let's be real, that's 1,000 pages of rules. It also doesn't help that the suggested retail cost is about $150. In this video, I'll be showing you how to start your first game of Dungeons & Dragons on the cheap. And when I say on the cheap, I mean it. Almost everything we cover in this video will have an absolutely free option, so stick around. What's up, gamers? I'm Josh and this is Copper Dragon Games. On this channel I cover different ways for dungeon masters to improve their games of Dungeons & Dragons. But if you're taking the time to watch this video, you may not have even started yet. So let's go ahead and jump right in so the rest of my content will be relevant. So aside from players, you need 4 things to get started in Dungeons & Dragons. You need the rules, you need some dice, you need character sheets, and you need some kind of adventure to run. We'll cover all 4 of those and talk about some free and some extremely budget ways to play Dungeons & Dragons. Before we go any further, it's important to note that there are starter sets for Dungeons & Dragons. Nowadays, you can literally go to Walmart and pick up a starter set for Dungeons & Dragons. I sure wish that was true when I was getting started. Regardless of which one you pick, it's going to come with some dice, an adventure, some character sheets, and the rules. So if you have $20 lying around and you want to get started with one of the starter sets, that's totally cool. Just go grab one at your local gaming store or at Walmart or wherever else they're selling them these days. Or if you want to order them online, you can go to the description of this video, and I've got some links where you can purchase them online. But if you don't have $20 lying around and you want to start for free, keep watching and I'll show you how to get there. So first, let's cover the rules. You're going to want these first, and preferably a while before you start your game because there's a lot to digest and you want to read through them ahead of time before you start playing. A lot of people will suggest that you go ahead and go out and spend $150 on the Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, and Monster Manual. And if you are going to play Dungeons & Dragons for a long period of time, you definitely need those. They are the core rulebooks for a reason. Other adventures and supplements that you pick up along the way are going to point back to and reference those 3 core rulebooks. So eventually you're going to want them. But if you're just getting started, there's really only one document that you need, and that's the basic rules. You can download a PDF of the basic rules just straight from the Wizards of the Coast website. It's free, and most of what you find there you're not going to need a printed copy of. You can download it, print a handful of pages that you may need in-game, and just let the rest sit on your hard drive. The basic rules give you everything you need to play a game of Dungeons & Dragons. What you miss out on is a lot of the character options that players will get from the Player's Handbook, as well as some of the monsters from the Monster Manual, and some magic items and optional rules that you'll find in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Actually, you'll miss out on some optional rules in the Player's Handbook too, but yeah. The basic rules cover most of the generic fantasy tropes anyway. You'll find humans, elves, dwarves, and halflings there, as well as warriors, spellcasters, and rogues. Once you've got a decent handle on the rules and you've decided that you're going to stick it out with this Dungeons & Dragons thing, and that you'll be spending enough time with the game to invest some money in the hobby, then it'll be time to go ahead and invest the money in the core rulebooks. But even before that, there's one key free document that you can also download to get you a bunch of new options that are not in the basic rules, but that also don't cost you extra to get your hands on. And those are from the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition system reference document. The good news is that this document opens up many, but not all, options from the core rulebooks that aren't available in the basic rules. The bad news is that this document is not really written for players, it's written for publishers. So a lot of what you get in the system reference document is very crunchy game mechanics without a ton of explanation. But once you've mastered the basic rules, most of that should come pretty easily to you anyway. The system reference document still doesn't have as much material as the Player's Handbook, for example, but it does add the other classes and races. So with the addition of the system reference document, you can add Dragonborn to your party, or gnomes to your party, or have somebody play a warlock instead of a wizard. All options that aren't technically available with just the basic rules. The next thing you're going to need is some dice. You can't play D&D without dice, or at least some way of generating random numbers at different ranges. Unfortunately, I don't have a way for you to get free physical dice. I guess you could get creative with some paper crafting. I know that's a thing. but definitely not my forte. The good news is, if you are here and watching this video, I know you have some kind of internet connection. And there are lots of free dice rolling tools online. I'll link to a few of those in the description below. There's just something about the tactile sensation of rolling real dice that I know you can play Dungeons & Dragons without rolling real dice, but it just doesn't feel the same. So get some. Okay, just get some. It's worth it. You could get them for like $5 or less. Get some dice. You're also going to need some character sheets. If this is your first time playing D&D, or maybe your player's first time playing D&D as well, I highly suggest running with some pre-generated characters. This lets you skip the character creation piece of the game, which in my opinion happens to be one of the most fun parts of the game, but it's also a part of the game that is kind of lost on new players in a lot of cases because they don't really understand the process and they don't know what they're building toward. New players end up making a lot of choices about their characters as they start out without really understanding the consequences of those choices. And that can lead to some characters that are just not fun to play, but it also leads to frustration and confusion because we don't generally like having to make decisions when we don't understand the consequences of those decisions. It's just part of being people. So if it's their first time, I really suggest pre-made characters. Now, you can find these all over the place. It's a simple Google search. I'll also have some links to a classic adventuring party, so your players can play some of those classic D&D tropes. The dwarven cleric, the elven wizard, the halfling rogue, for example. As the game goes on, your players are eventually going to level up and need to change the stats on the sheet, or they're going to decide they don't want a pre-made character. Now that they understand the game better, they want to build their own. Either way, you're going to need some regular character sheets that you can update and fill in the blanks. If you want paper copies, there are tons of free options out there. In the description, you'll be able to find links to a few of my favorites. If you want a digital option, my suggestion is that you sign up for a free account with D&D Beyond. With D&D Beyond, you can get a free account, as I just mentioned, and use all the basic rules and the rules from the system reference document to build your characters. The last essential thing that you need before you play Dungeons & Dragons is some kind of adventure to run. Those characters that you just created or downloaded, if you use pre-generated characters, are going to need something to do in the game. Maybe they need to rescue the prince from the dragon, or save the village from a marauding band of goblins, or delve into a deep dungeon and find the buried treasure. Whatever it is that they need to do. And your best resource for free adventures is right here, because you can create them all yourself. However, when you're just getting started out, I would encourage you to use one of the published adventures as a roadmap for your first game or 2 or 3 or however many you want. And if you're going to use a published adventure, I have a couple suggestions. The first one is that you check out some of the free adventures over on dmsguild.com. I'll link to some of those in the description below, but here's what they have going for them. 1, they're free. And that fits the criteria of what we're talking about in this video. But it's more than that. Many of the adventures on the DMs Guild website were written for Adventurers League. And Adventurers League is the organized play component of Dungeons & Dragons. I have some feelings about Adventurers League that I might share in a different video. But for a new Dungeon Master, these adventures help in several different ways. 1, they are intended to be played within just one sitting, one session. So they're organized in such a way that you should be able to start and complete them in around 1 to 4 hours. Part of the way they achieve that short time period worth of play is by being very straightforward and to the point. They pitch their plot hooks very quickly in the adventure, and the steps that players need to complete in order to achieve success are usually pretty easy to figure out. Because they're either cheap or free, and they're intended to be run in a very short period of time, and they don't give players a whole lot of options to run off the rails. These are ideal for a first-time Dungeon Master who just needs to get through the first couple sessions and build confidence in their ability to run the game. And that's really all you need to play a game of Dungeons & Dragons. And you may be thinking, but Josh, what about the miniatures? What about the Dungeon Master screen? What about the maps? It's okay. Don't worry. Those things are all awesome to have, and they're all things that I use, but you don't need them. They're not necessary to play the game. And they're certainly a lot harder to come by for free. So I'll make a video later on about those optional materials and props that you don't need, but that are super nice to have. But until then, grab some players, grab some dice, grab some rules, and have tons of fun in your first game of Dungeons & Dragons. If what I shared in this video was at all helpful to you, I hope you'll take the time to click the subscribe button below, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future updates. I'll be back soon with more tips and tricks on how to improve your game of Dungeons & Dragons. I'll see you then. I almost forgot to mention that this video had been on my list of things to do for quite some time, but rose to the top of my list of priorities when a buddy of mine shared with me that his son was talking about wanting to do what Josh does. Be a Dungeon Master. So this one's for you, Silas. Happy gaming and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Club. You're going to be awesome.